Good afternoon, Year 12. This is a short screencast to review the holiday homework set for December and January this year. The reason I'm preparing this screencast is because we were a little bit rushed today in period 4, so I thought it would be a good chance to review what we discussed, and it's a reference point if people are stuck and they're not sure what they need to do. So this document that I'm looking at and you should have printed in front of you is the Head Start holiday homework. If you have misplaced it, all you need to do is go onto your classroom and find a copy of it on there. It should be on everybody's Google Classrooms. All right, there are 3 levels to this homework, and that is what you must do, what you should do, and what you can do. Now, whilst I was talking about this in class, there's a lot going up here, and there was a few additional things like themes and whatnot that I wanted to reference. So if you go onto this electronic document and you go to page 6, which you won't have printed out because I've only just added, but on the electronic document you will, you'll see what I'm going to be talking about. So my first note is all your notes over the summer need to be handwritten, and this is really important, and I have no doubt if you ask a current Year 12 student who's just finished what you should do, they would recommend handwriting everything, because you need to train the muscles in your hand. You also need to practice. It's a proven fact that handwritten notes are remembered and more easily recalled by students than those notes that are typed. So my first recommendation to you is to handwrite everything. So let's start with what you must do. You need to re-watch Stories We Tell, and I would suggest probably a few times. And that's easy enough to do. Grab some friends over, you can pop it on. If you're just sitting around on a Sunday afternoon and it's too hot to go and do anything, chuck it on and have another watch. While you're watching, and to make sure you're watching it in a meaningful way, what we want you to do is summarize each storyteller's contribution and use the template that's included in this doc. So here is the template, and that's a blank one. So you need to identify the character, the relationships they have, summarize, list any key qualities or characteristics. So this might be kind of a gossip, you might call Johnny. Or Mark, you might say, is afraid of what happened between his mother and his father, and he doesn't want that to happen in his marriage. Or you might say Sarah is curious or searching, or some other qualities or characteristics that you think describe the particular character that you are, or storyteller, not character, the storyteller that you are writing about. And here's a spot to put any meaningful quotes. Now, these two don't necessarily need to be separate. You can include them amongst your notes here, but you might just want to highlight them or underline them if they're a quote or a particular adjective that you'd like to refer back to in terms of a quality or trait. Now, how this might look, Miss Hando's done an example here, and this is for Michael Polly. So what you need to do is write the time reference as you're watching, and you're doing a very kind of basic summary about what's happening in their story or their contribution to the documentary. So while you're watching, and you should all have a copy of this on your computers, you should have downloaded it before you've gone away, otherwise you'll need to find a copy online, is Mrs. Hando's just watched it, and she's written from 0 minutes, so from the very start, you'll see, to 2 minutes 21. The voiceover begins the story. Michael uses a quote from the Margaret Atwood novel to talk about stories, or the idea of stories. Writes the story of his relationship with Diane from beginning to end. So that's not a lot of information. It's just a brief summary of what happens in those first 2 minutes. Okay? So you've got the film opening, and we can jump forward a little bit. You might add a comment about moving into the recording studio and setting up if you want, but that's not really kind of an enormous contribution to your analysis, okay?
So this is...
and then she's gone on from there. At 4 minutes 30, he comes back on camera and he starts by referencing his own story, and I think that's where he launches into... It began with the DNA, and he talks about his birth in Ilford, and which is a county in England. And this kind of, he always was a being, he was always kind of in the stars. It was fate that he would be born and he would be the person he is. Basically, we are all destined to be what we are, and that's kind of his story. He's just setting the frame for his tale that he's about to tell, basically, about Sarah and her life and how she came to be. And basically, I think he's trying to say that we're all destined to be the people that we're going to be, according to some greater power than our own, I would suggest. All right, and then there's more notes. 8 minutes 50 comes back on. 10 minutes, Michael recalls a play where they were in together, and you might say Diane there if you weren't sure, etc. So these are the kinds of notes you're going to take. And I can tell some people will be thinking, this is a lot of notes to take, but what I would suggest is you need to set up your pages, whether you want to print 10 or 15 of these for each character, or whether you want to draw them up in your exercise book, or just, I wouldn't do it in an exercise book, I would actually do it on loose leaf paper, and I would have all of the people I know are going to appear at the start, and I would name all the papers and draw them up, and I would just have them sitting there. So as each character appears, I'd pull that piece of paper over and add a note. So I'd see that, say we're up to, we're at 29.
Then he thought he heard something that sounded like distress.
29 minutes, and we might say, and it could be Johnny, and we could say Johnny overhears Diane speaking on the phone, and I might include a quote about the fact that she is pregnant and she's not sure who the father is, and she's thinking about getting an abortion. Those are 3 kind of thoughts she has. And you would just say 29 minutes to wherever, and then make the comment about Johnny, what Johnny's overheard. Okay, so that's how it would work. And then you can put that sheet aside. Maybe Joanna appears, and then you grab Joanna's sheet, add a note to her sheet. I said to my class, that's a big task if you're going to watch the film all in one go. I would suggest doing maybe 15 minutes or half an hour blocks at a time, and make your notes as you go, and then come back to it. And that's a really good way to go back and forth with the film. Make sure when you are watching it, you're watching it in a really focused and critical manner, and you're not just kind of, oh, get this over and done with, because if you're approaching it like that, you're not going to have the most meaningful notes. Now, while you are watching, I also suggested that you might make note of any scenes or ideas linked to key themes. Now, these are the key themes here. We've got memory and meaning, reality, the power of stories, hybrid documentaries, secrets, and fiction versus reality. Now, if you refer to slides 61 and 66 of our Head Start slides, and these are also on your classrooms, now 61 to 66, let's go. These are detailed here. If you're not sure of something or you want a point clarified, first of all, ask somebody in your class. That's a good place to start. But if you don't get a reply, or they're not able to help you, then please reach out to one of us and we will reply with some further clarification for you. But I've noted the colours on here in the corner for each one. Basically, it's just a way to organise your notes so that when you're referring back to your summaries, which you want to be useful, you're able to quickly find things that you need based on a colour kind of system, okay? And that's just a way to organise and quick reference yourself. These are the kind of habits you need to get into, so when you're doing revision at the end of the year, your notes are in a really good, accessible format. I might even post a sample of what that might look like with the colour coding maybe next week, okay? The second task that you need to do is read 1984. Now, you are looking for the cover that looks like this, or the other Penguin Modern Classic, which was kind of a purpley cover, and it says the annotated version. That's exactly the same in terms of page references, etc. So read that. And Stasiland, doesn't matter which cover you or version you purchase, because I think they're all by the same publisher and they all have the same page numbers. Both of these are great texts and really, really interesting texts. My suggestion is to get cracking with 1984 before Christmas and try and knock that over. In the new year, get onto Stasiland. If you're a quicker reader or you like to read, then try and read them both before Christmas. But I would start with 1984 because I really think that's the basis from which you need to make your comparison. And Stasiland feeds in a more free-flowing manner. Now, 1984 is what's called a dystopian text, so it's an imagined future in London, and it focuses on the character of Winston Smith and his kind of search for truth in a place called Oceania. On the whole, I've received really positive feedback. People found this a really interesting read. It is not the most uplifting of tales, but it is an interesting read, and George Orwell writes in a really kind of engaging manner from the perspective of Winston Smith. The themes that we're looking at for those two texts are listed down here, and I will, of course, add maybe a little bit more notes to that in terms of some specificity about what you might be looking for. And you can also see links to some videos here about how to annotate your books for those two texts. 1984 is in 3 parts. It's about 350 pages long, and basically it focuses on a year and a half or 2 years of Winston's, it might not even be that long, it might only be a year of Winston's life in this city, which is kind of a broken down London of today. And it's Orwell, the author, George Orwell. It's his imagining of the future if we allowed a government to take total control of its citizens and its country. And he's showing basically how power can be such a corrupting force and a dangerous force if people are complacent and let the government take that power. The second text, and the one that we are comparing it to, is called Stasiland by Anna Funder. Now, the term Stasiland is probably not something you've come across, but the word Stasi is the name of the police or the secret police that existed within East Germany, which used to be a communist state. Now, Anna Funder is an Australian author, and what she does is she interviews a number of people that used to live in East Germany before it was reunited with West Germany. So West Germany exhibited the values of capitalism, free market, etc. In the East, which was in East Berlin and the whole of East Germany, people were living under the system of communism, in which kind of collectively assets were owned by the state and you just got what you needed, etc. Some people lived a good life, some people led a really troubled life, and Anna Funder's kind of search is for ordinary heroes that lived in that time and how they kind of stood up to the Stasi and the government of the day, which is led by a man called Mielke, or I think that's how you pronounce it, Mielke. And it's a really kind of engaging story or novel with a range of different people's perspectives. So she interviews people that worked for the Stasi, she interviews victims of the Stasi, she interviews people who are part of the government propaganda machine. And what I mean by that is the people who were responsible for producing media and other forms of news, etc., that were not necessarily true but were approved by the government, and it helped them control the state. So what you're looking at is the ways in which these two governments are similar in these two texts, what Orwell and Anna are both trying to achieve in writing their text, and also about the ways in which the governments in these two texts work. Like, what tools do they use? Do they use them, even if they have the same tools like propaganda, do they use them in the same way? Anna Funder's book or text is about real people and real stories. George Orwell is about one person and it's an imagined story. So you've got these great points of comparison. So while you're reading, try to percolate all those little ideas. But remember, write in the cover the key themes, and if you're going and you want to annotate, go ahead and annotate. There are videos to help you do that, and I'll talk about that in the next step. The second last thing you need to do, you must do, is to read the 4 stories in Ireland. Now, these aren't very long. I think this one and the boat are like 60 pages each. This one might be 20 or 30, and this one's only about 10 pages, but you need to read all 4 of those. And they're really great, and Alistair MacLeod, who wrote the short stories, did so over many, many years, and they're just such beautifully crafted stories that are rich in detail, and that's really what you need to be looking at in these texts, is the detail, and you're going to try and emulate or copy that by writing your own short story linked to one of these texts, depending which one you end up choosing. The last thing that you must do is to revise the key vocab from Study Blue and Quizlet. Again, these are on these slides, and I will put the slide number for you to quick reference it, but it's on slide 27. So all you have to do is click on that and it'll pop up. But the Quizlet set is meta language for studying film and new media texts. And then there's 2 Study Blues. There's one about terminology and one about meta language. So I'll make a note on here, see slide 29, and I'll link those slides in there for you. All right. Okay. Right. So you've got all that. The next thing, this is what you should do. Ideally, you annotate the texts maybe while you're reading the first time. It depends how you like to read. I tend to do it when I'm reading the very first time, but some people like to read it once through and then annotate. Do it how you like. With 1984, we recommend watching these videos by a gentleman or a teacher called... Oh, that's not the right link. I'll have to get the correct link for you. Hold on. Videos. Let's go and have a look on here. This guy, Bob.
New dark chalk raspberry and
Bob Alsmeyer, I think his name is. So let's change that. He has 3 videos, so he tackles each part of the of 1984 because it's in 3 parts. And basically, you can just watch him and add some notes as you go. He's very helpful. I would read the first part, and then I would go and watch the video after that and add your notes on what he said. With Stasiland, Miss Sparrow has prepared a screencast, which is also on the Miss Brooks English channel, all one word. And it is... Oh, and it is...
happening, so...
She's gone through the ebook and annotated the first 4 chapters. Don't pay attention to the colour highlighter she used, just that she highlighted is that you want to make note of. And those, again, you can access them through a link here. They are, I think that one's 40 minutes, that is. But, you know, watch 20 minutes and come back and watch the rest. It's up to you. The themes, so write these in the front cover of both novels. These are the things we're looking at. I will add to this a little bit just to clarify what they are if you're a bit unsure. So make sure you please check this electronic document before you go ahead and do that. Finally, what you can do, you can start drafting essays, and I wouldn't even say you need to do whole essays. I would just think about a paragraph. So for example, if you look on slide 72, there's some essay questions here. And hold on, here we go. And it says, you know, there's 7 there, and we've given you some more in the handbook, which you can access electronically. But you might just say, stories we tell suggest that the truth is rarely simple. So basically what I would be doing is thinking about, well, what's an argument I could make to agree or kind of contest that idea? Is it rarely simple or isn't it? And why do I think that way? And basically, if you can do, I would mind map that and come up with some different ideas, what examples you might use to show that the truth is rarely simple. And for that, you could be thinking about the fact that Sarah Polly uses this cacophony, this wide range of voices to tell her story, because she doesn't think the truth is as simple as Harry seems to think it is. And Harry seems to think that the truth can only come from one individual who is a direct witness to the event, is what he calls it. And this can be compared with, so Harry has a version of the truth, then Michael says the only way to actually be true and honest is to show the full 6 hours back to back of my interviews without any editing, without any intervention, just show my straight interview. And Sarah, the third person, has another idea about what it means to show the truth, and she thinks it is this range of voices. So basically, just have a crack. Grab a piece of paper, write this question in the middle, do some brainstorming off it. 10 or 15 minutes, that's no harm off your day there. And once if you've read and done all of this, then that's a good activity to get you started. You could complete a timeline, tracking the important events and characters in each of the novels. For example, Winston's journey or evolution across the novel of 1984, which I think is a really interesting way to analyse the novel, how he progresses from the beginning to the end, what happens to him, etc. And then Anna Funder's, you can think about the different people she meets and how that informs her perspective, etc. You could develop a vocab list for comparative. Again, I think if you're on the Study Blue and Quizlet links, I've already got some comparative word lists linked to my account, so you can have a look and see if you can see those there. Finally, brainstorm connections or points of difference between the two texts. You can use a Venn diagram or a mind map. There are other ideas in the handbook for this. So as I said before earlier in this video, there are a number of ways to link them, and these are the ways that we consider making connections. All right, we're at nearly 22 minutes. I'm going to stop it there. If you have any questions or concerns, then please email your teacher. We are all working up until the 20th of December. Then I think we'll be checked out for a couple of weeks, but then you can check in again in early January if you like. We will be on our emails, on and off in that period. Not every day, but on and off. So feel free to make contact if you've got any questions, concerns, or queries. We look forward to hearing from you. Good luck.